Cool, guys. Why don't we just do a super brief intro and your favorite food so far in Thailand? Start with you, John.
Oh, geez. Hi, everyone. My name's John. I am one of the co-founders of Celestia. I do protocol research, manage engineers, that kind of stuff. Occasionally, I should post on Twitter. Favorite food in Thailand so far? Probably the pad thai, which is very fitting because it's Thailand.
Hi everyone, I'm a co-founder of Scroll, where I lead research and strategy. So my favorite food so far is like more organic coconut water because I haven't been like try that a lot. But every time like every meal I try that. Like yeah.
Hi, I'm Ed from Offchain Labs, developers of Arbitrum, and my favorite food so far has been the amazing fresh fruit.
And my name is Alex. I'm the founder of ZK Sync, and my best food in Thailand so far was Japanese.
Awesome. And I'm Andy from the Rollup, and my favorite food has been the mango and sticky rice. So props to you, Ed, as well. Cool, guys. Well, thanks for being here. And to kind of start us off, I just want to run through the past of where rollups have came from. And one of the big structural changes since the advent of Arbitrum and Optimism in 2020, 2021 has been the ease of ability to launch new rollups. And that's been like the biggest breakthrough, I think, for rollup teams, the advent of rollup as a service providers, rollup clusters, and really just like reducing the cost to launch new chains. And obviously, we have data availability providers like Celestia that also help out with that. What are some of the second and third order consequences that we've seen so far as a result of this ease of launching new chains? And what are some that we may not have seen yet but are coming? So, John, why don't we start with you there?
Sure. So I guess the first order effect would be that if it's easier to launch a rollup, more rollups get launched, which is that we see L2 there's like a whole bunch of them. I don't even know the number now of rollups that have launched or that are going to launch. But I think the thing that affects the end user the most is that with the increasing solutions for secure data availability, such as Celestia, such as EIP 4844, the cost for users has decreased dramatically, right? From pre-EIP 4844 and pre-Celestia days, that allows substantially more users from countries that are potentially less financially or less, I don't want to say third world countries, but rather countries that are less developed. Where people don't make $100,000 a year, but might make salaries of substantially less than that, such as Thailand being one of them, and so on, have now more access to unstoppable applications on blockchains, have access to open and free financial services, have access to things like the US dollar without having to go through their own centralized government for permission. And there's all a second and third order result of costs being driven down without sacrificing security. And this is kind of all the result of making it easier to launch rollups and also giving options for those rollups, giving resources to those rollups, such as high throughput of data availability.
To me, like clearly, like as John said, like more and more rollup appearing, and like it used to be like it's very hard to launch a rollup, and the tech is like a big moat for large rollup companies. But now, like applications who has distribution, kind of like can easily kind of cross this moat for like they own their own block space and all those stuff, and makes that easier and easier. So I think the second order impact is that what I can see and what I hope to see more is like the development like velocity for changing like adding new precompiles and like adding more experimental features like to certain rollup is becoming more and more like because the rollup is getting more modular and like you can easily add new features and kind of like justify the protocol to kind of support very different thing, and which is a good thing for the whole industry because like even for like larger rollup they can kind of pick up like which feature and has been battle tested and like into the mainnet to kind of enrich the other features. I think that's one thing which I think is a very positive impact to kind of like improving like how fast like you can build new features and iterate and like make that better. And another thing which I hope to see and like is like a lot of like it's still hadn't there with this the third order of mega effectively like when we have so people all expect like rollup have interoperability. But right now it's still like very bad, or like it rely on shared governance or whatever, and people expect ZK to have like really real-time proving and having layer one like single thread finality, but that won't really come very, very fast. So the compatibility is still very, very bad. It's still a narrative. And so I think I hope to see like some like kind of like, which like Ed might have different opinion, but like interop is really hard to do with like to be like fully trustless, even with ZK. And a lot of like chains have to rely on like bridge and having liquidity on both sides. So I hope to see like maybe like some coordination effort to make this happen. And also like similar to interop, I think interop is just one way of like network effect, because even if you look at a large ROP, right, like Arbitrum, like Optimism, like the biggest reason why people come to a rollup, general purpose rollup, is like because they have network effect, you have compatibility. I think interop, like super chain style type of thing, like using shared governance and trying to kind of lock in chains into certain interop groups, and that creates some type of network effect. But I think one thing which has been ignored is like some other infra can also be shared, like shared proof aggregation, shared blob. I think as the chains getting more and more, there can be a large marketplace for like what other services can be shared, like AA infra and all those stuff. I think that can be something really, really good. Like, because after you have more shared infra, it can make chains even easier to launch and with a shared network effect. But yeah.
I would add a couple things to these. One is the rise of L3. Currently in the Ethereum stack, L3s account for about half of the total gas usage. And I think, many people did not predict that, but it seems to be a pretty robust trend. And if anything, it's growing. And the other thing, which I think is related, is customization of chains. That is, people launching chains that are not just a copy of whatever the flagship chain of that technology stack is, but instead they're customizing different things about it. They can be minor things, or relatively straightforward things like custom gas token or a different block time. But you're also seeing people that are optimizing chains for different things, adopting different sort of economic models, and more customization of the core code. And I think that will grow. We're going to see more L3. We're going to see more diversity of different chains. And I think that diversity especially is going to become more and more a real strength of the Ethereum stack.
And I'll just add to this, I think the first order effects have been really well covered. What we will see once the interop, which I think is the defining feature of the rollup clusters, once this feature is actually live, and we know that it's coming live very soon, probably early next year on at least some of the clusters, we will see that most or many successful applications will become their own app chains. There are just way too many reasons and incentives for them to do this. But now they can't really do it because they will create very strong fragmentation of their users. The migration from the existing chains is hard. Reach to the user audience with certain wallets is hard. Like moving liquidity is costly and adds risks. Once those are eliminated, like we will really see the proliferation of the app chain and the rise of the app chain.
Yeah, and to kind of expand on what Ed and Yi have said, in addition to customizability, I think there's also been a rise in experimentation in things like LVMs, right? You have Arbitrum Stylus, you have Eclipse's SVM, stuff like this, which are like the absolute extreme of customizability, which is that's actually experimentation with something that's completely new that we didn't see before. This is possible because it's now easy to deploy a rollup. And experimentation is good because the third order effect of this is that we can experiment, find new things, and then incorporate the new things that are good that we find into other parts of the ecosystem. So it's a very positive sum game of experiment and find the things that can benefit everyone.
Awesome. So I think one core property here is this growth of rollup clusters. Like this has been, it's in the best incentives of some of these larger rollup ecosystems to build their own shared interop, to facilitate an ecosystem for builders, and it also just makes sense to be able to build these kind of like fiefdoms, if you will. I worry that we're building walled gardens and that we kind of have to think about how to put these bringing these together and kind of break these down. But I want to get spicy. This was not on the questions list. Ed and Alex, how do you guys think about the Elastic Chain and ZK stack and the Arbitrum Orbit stack, specifically around collaborative for growing Ethereum, but also direct competition, where recently Treasure DAO, one of the biggest Arbitrum games and chains, shifted over to ZK stack. How do you guys kind of balance this like juxtaposition of building Ethereum together versus like trying to win the best builders for your individual stacks?
I think what's happening now is we're looking to grow the pie much more than we're looking internally to play zero-sum games. What we're doing, what's really great for Ethereum is this permissionless innovation that is happening at L2 level. We're offering some unique capabilities, something that you cannot do on other chains. Like for example, on ZK Sync with ZK Stack, you have native count abstraction, and we have a number of chains joining specifically for this, building consumer applications or gaming applications, and it makes a lot more sense to them to join for this reason. We have chains looking at building like privacy or like private networks, not only privacy preserving, but also private because they are institutional or enterprise chains. They are very interested in having like something like a private Validium where they can control things, but still be part of the interoperable network with larger network effects. We're going after those external new avenues to bring more users, more use cases into Ethereum.
Yeah, I mean, I think the primary goal is to grow the Ethereum stack, right? And we're all part of the Ethereum stack. There is making that pie bigger is the most important thing. You know, there is some diversity of approaches. You know, using different stacks or different arrangements has different pros and cons. I think that diversity and that you know, sort of friendly competition is important to getting to success. The idea that we would try to cram everything into a single framework, try to cram everything into single governance, to me is exactly the opposite of what we should be doing.
Appreciate it. Another one that's just kind of came to top of mind that we were chatting about earlier was about the recent proposals for improving the L1. And Ed, we spoke on the panel yesterday about some of the largest 20 hours ago. Like the big problem with L2 interop right now is that basically we need to have the interoperability between different L2s to be able to be verified within the 12-second slot time on Ethereum, and then finalized over that 12 to 18-minute period in a trustless way is the big kind of kicker there of the other three kind of factors. What are your guys' takes from the Rollup perspective on improving Ethereum L1, specifically Justin Drake's ideas or other ideas that would improve the L2 experience for users? Anybody can take a stab at it.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll go.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, John.
Okay, sure. I guess I'll go. I guess the way Ethereum currently is, I didn't watch the panel yesterday, so I don't have the context. but I guess the way Ethereum currently is, you know, with the EVM, it doesn't exactly have any native support to encourage interoperability, bridging, and so on with the rollups, right? So obviously, now that we know that we're going in the direction of L2s are a thing, L3s are a thing, if you can improve the L1 to support natively this kind of bridging and interop, I mean, why wouldn't you? That's obviously a good thing to do. Those, you know, various trade-offs, nuances, and so on, and actually choosing specific things. But you know, Ethereum as it is today, you know, is missing some of these features. But you know, if you go in the direction of Beam, or in Celestia's case, right, there's a concept known as lazy bridging, right, which is essentially natively supported interop and bridging. Then of course this is substantially beneficial to a world that is, or like a blockchain architecture that is focused around layer 2s being and layer 3s being a thing.
Yeah, from my view, I think it like you can align on certain standard, which I think all the layer 2 are trying to do, like, you know, certain standard for messaging and how you do the cross-chain communication. But like my personal, like, you know, view, like, you know, I think it will be really, really hard to have like a really amazing level of interop between different chains, because that like different stack is designed like in a way that like they have very different design philosophy. Like for example, like certain interop rely on like reading layer 1 data and like using that as pre-confirmation because you can't revert that. But if you use state diff, which means like other rollup can't just trust like the certain state diff you posted, which might be a blocking factor for other rollup to actually having faster finality. And a certain rollup is either to upgrade to ZK, but certain rollups are not, right? Because it's like you have more complete bridge design. So I think it takes a very long time to kind of for major rollup to really have like that really amazing like interoperability, unless like it's. I think it will start with some like like a RIP, EIP to kind of like really standardize the communication, and then later into a stage where I think it's just like either like everyone moving to changing some of their design philosophy to be interoperable with others. But right now, I don't think like the interop. There's a very very clear benefits to have that amazing like because I think every kind of large chain they have very solo ecosystem which interop pretty fine with Arbitrum has their own swap, Scroll has their own swap decks, and which the user experience is pretty good. And you don't have to kind of like have this interop between different chains to kind of do that if you are a large enough ecosystem. So I think it takes a very long time, but within a rollup cluster, it might be possible because you can put other trust assumptions on like certain gadgets, TEs or whatever to simulate real-time proving or something like that, and having sub Ethereum block time. But it's very hard to extend to general purpose like because the philosophy is just very different.
So I think in terms of what L2con and should do, it's important for L1 to focus on the sort of fundamental metrics, things like block time and finality time, as well as issues around censorship in particular. As if L1 improves on all of those in all of those ways, it helps all of us. It helps L2 and it helps L1 users. The thing I think that there is a trap though that L1 could fall into, which is to try to essentially build L2 infrastructure for the L2s. And and the reason this I think doesn't make sense is first of all that L1 is slower moving in how it changes and adjusts. And of course that's appropriate because L1 is the security foundation of everything we all do, right? And so it should be more careful, move more slowly, and be more conservative in terms of innovation, right? But also, I think the diversity of approaches among L2s is actually quite important. And if you try to enshrine one approach into L1, I think you cut off a lot of really valuable innovation. So, as far as interop goes, I think there is certainly space for more research about how best to do that. If you look at the solutions that are proposed now, it seems to me that L1 can best help with interop by just having fast block time, fast finality, and reorging less.
I fully agree with this. Well, I have just one ask for core developers: make Ethereum cypherpunk again. Like, this is one thing that you can only do on layer 1 is to increase resilience of the protocol. Everything else we can experiment, as Ed said, on the L2s. Like we can have centralized sequencers with super low latency, super high throughput, inheriting security from Ethereum. But if you compromise censorship resistance, resilience, centralization of the sequencing, like giving up on home stakers and like this kind of things, there's no way to put them back. Like if we end up with a single builder producing all the blocks for Ethereum, and then this builder is compromised for like really regulatory reasons or political reasons or technologically, like with one tactical strike on the data center anyway, it's like there's nothing we can do there. But L2s will survive even if you destroy the L2 sequencers, because they are designed this way. This is why we want to reach stage 2s. So like L2s are a lot more like a lot less fragile in a way than layer 1, and it should be hard, and it should harden and stay cypherpunk.
Awesome. I think there is a broad risk in the space that we're running right now that the future of Ethereum L2s becomes like Coinbase Base, Kraken, or other large L2s that have like 80 to 90% of this kind of total usage. And then there's like this Pareto distribution of like the bottom long tail 10% But on the flip side, I think that the Ethereum community should be striving for a much more balanced distribution of usage and activity and TVL across likely hundreds of different L2s. Are we heading toward that former path now of like more dominant singular L1 or 2 L2s or 3? Or, and if so, how can we kind of readjust to this world of more and more chains?
I think the key question is control decentralized, right? And you can have, that's more important, I think, than how many chains there are, right? It's not so much about counting, it's about if there are, say, several large L2s, how decentralized are they? How much, and are they truly decentralized, right? So is there more than just an on-paper right to participate? Or is in fact the power in the hands of the broad community? You know, there was a talk I know in the other day over at the main DevCon event about decentralization theater, and I think it's really important to recognize that and call it out when it happens, because true decentralization is really what we need.
Just want to add there.
Yeah, sure. So I guess going even more extreme than Ed's point, which is that it's not even about the numbers, and I would say it's not even about centralization or not. So long as there's no tricking going on, and so long as everyone knows what they're doing, in my opinion, you should just let the market decide. I think what Andy was hinting at, and forgive me if I'm misinterpreting what you're saying, is that potentially exchange ran or supported rollups may be considered to be more centralized in some way than ones that are developed kind of in the absence of this exchange influence. Correct me if I'm wrong. And you know, that's it. That's what you're saying.
Like the future of Ethereum is Coinbase and Kraken. It's like,
Yeah,
what do we do here?
So in my opinion, assuming there's no trickery going on and they don't misinterpret the centralization aspects of those chains, I would say even if 100% of layer 2 usage is those chains, there's no problem with that if we just let the market decide. If the market is okay with something, then you shouldn't tell them don't be okay with this. Again, assuming there's no trickery going on.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like a possible like future. I don't believe it's like Coinbase controlling unless like there is a clean separation between Base and Coinbase, because there are clearly something like I don't know, like what if developer deploy some kind of privacy stuff like on Base, and whether sequencer will start doing something. But so I think it's still like definitely like market decide. But my personal prediction is that still like it will be very long tail. Like there are several like rollup with major network effect, because the composability and everything else is just so great. And the long tail will be like either rollup serving for a very niche group of user, like certain regions, and they make rollup a very like runnable business, because they can make profit, they can use app-based sequencing or whatever, like to kind of like extract some value and run that as a business, or they have their own distribution without strong dependency on like the rest of the crypto even the crypto ecosystem, right? Like it can be a totally separate thing, and then those rollup with distribution can still like be there, because we know like we have been running a rollup for like a year on mainnet. We know how hard that is to kind of really reach RPC, Explorer, channeling, Oracle, all those kind of like not like come for free. So I think still like major will dominate. But I think if something really happened, like Coinbase is really having control over Ethereum ecosystem at whole, then like I think the whole ecosystem still will value against this, and like maybe there are some we just tell them like okay, this is bad, and like see what will happen, but nothing like else we can do.
Thanks. So as we grow to understand how the community should be thinking about rollups with the relationship to Ethereum, one mental model that we heard earlier on a podcast is that Ethereum L1 should be competing with Bitcoin from a store of value perspective, while L2s should be competitive with the Solanas and L1s of the world. Is this something that you guys agree with, or is there a different frame of reference for the relationship between L2s and L1 with regards to Bitcoin as well as other L1s in the space today? Ed, you want to take a step?
Sure. I actually think the combination of L1 plus L2 is more powerful than either one alone. In other words, I think you have an environment where versus Bitcoin, the programmability of the Ethereum stack is a huge benefit. Against Solana, you have other, more diversity, more flexibility, and I think you have a more robust and more sustainable approach to operating the chains. So I don't see L1 and L2 as sort of being in different markets. I see them as in a much more sort of symbiotic relationship. And my thinking about this is more and more thinking in terms of the Ethereum stack, as opposed to L1 and L2 being like parties who are sort of just operating in separate worlds.
Yeah, I think in my view it's very similar. I think layer 2 plus layer 2 is layer 1 plus layer 2 is definitely more powerful, because if you think about like a really, really long-term future where billions of people are really using like blockchain on a daily basis, it's like even Solana level of like throughput is like not enough, because you really need to bring like like very robust and even more scalable infra, and this is only possible on layer 2 because you can make very different trade-off for like you don't need to bootstrap everything with your decentralized validator and everything, and then you can do way more experiment. You can just move way faster than like I think Solana might also went into a stage where it's very hard to for them to kind of like add new features and iterate really fast to adapt to what everyone needs, right? So I think that's something like super powerful, and how I think about layer 2 and layer 1, and also because a lot of risk for crypto operating crypto come from regulation, and layer 2 makes that way easier because you don't need to do the heavy lifting for how how much value your token has to kind of secure the whole network. So that's where I see the layer 2 actually coming. By the way, like one point add to the previous like Coinbase stuff, I think what's actually even more worse is like not just like Coinbase dominating all the Ethereum transaction, but also every product they are building, like Coinbase wallet and everything. Like basically, it's like it's not an open market for all the wallet to come in to even compete within this kind of like, because they build all the product, and then like they kind of pushing for this is really bad.
Yeah, I think what we don't want to do is just replay what has happened in Web 2 and the power relationships that have developed there, right? This is a chance for us to build something new that is more decentralized in terms of power and puts more control in the hands of the community. And it would be a shame if we ended up kind of in the same power relationships that have existed in Web 2.
And from this perspective, I think it's this idea that Ethereum should be store of value, should be like, if not competing with Bitcoin, at least like going for the same strong position as a native crypto asset of this security zone, which Ethereum is very important. Because we end up with all the assets on like we have this super decentralized platform, but all of the assets are just reflections of some centralized, controlled asset from the traditional finance. Then we failed. This is why it's really, really important for Ethereum to play this role, and Bitcoin cannot play this role in the Ethereum ecosystem, because no matter what you do, like from connecting Bitcoin and Ethereum is not realistic trustlessly. So you will have like whatever reflection, whatever Bitcoin on Ethereum exists, is kind of a centralized asset. Ethereum is the only decentralized asset in our world.
Yeah, so I guess to kind of even to further iterate on that, at least in my opinion, while we can have debates about the total addressable market extreme, I think as it currently stands, the Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana, I don't really see them as competing among the same people, right? As Alex said, right? Bitcoin cannot be used as money in the Ethereum space. Similarly, Ethereum can't be used as in the same way, as digital gold for a certain set of people. And it's to the point that the pie right now is too small for there to really be any competition in the grand scheme of things. Right? The pie needs to grow by several other zeros before we get to the point that these protocols really could be considered as competing against each other on the kind of world stage of economies.
I think one recurring theme here, which has been extremely inspiring and just nice to continuously hear, is a return to the core ethos of crypto. A lot of kind of censorship resistance, decentralization focus, very, very focused at the task at hand. And meanwhile, in the rollup space, we're still working with a lot of stage 0 rollups to go to stage 1 and stage 1 to go to stage 2. And so as we kind of go through these transition, guys, over the next 12, 18, 24 months, what are some of the considerations that each of you are making for further solidifying the censorship resistance as well as decentralization of your individual L2, as well as the broader stack that is built on top of it? And Alex, maybe you can
So this is a priority for us at ZK because it aligns very tightly with our values. What we've done so far is we implemented multi-proofs with DE that have now run for every block in production alongside the ZK proofs, and eventually you probably want something like multiple ZK proofs running in parallel so that you really harden the proof system that secures the core engine of your networks. And we're working towards actually implementing the the stage one mechanisms that are required to stage one, like the priority queue. And they must be in production for a while, get to some degree of ossification before we can move to stage two, because it's very tricky to you want to maintain this balance between being able to respond to security problems, issues, bugs, whatever, or threats, and um, um, like getting to immutability that people desire.
Sure. In terms of censorship, this is obviously important, and it's something that for us has been a major factor motivating our design from the beginning. And we're continuing to work on this. Arbitrum has always given a guarantee against censorship. That assuming the L1 is censorship free, that you could definitely get your transaction in. And then the metric for improvement is how quickly can you do that in a way that is robust. And we're continuing to work on that. The next big step forward is the coming of decentralized sequencing. And we have this joint project, Offchain Labs, with Espresso Systems, and that is under development. And that gives you a situation where there's no one party or small set of parties who have the power to delay the inclusion of your transaction. And that's really important. But we can't forget, actually, that L1 has issues with censorship. And L1 gives very weak guarantees of inclusion, which is a significant, I think, design issue for a lot of L2s. So I also want to echo something Alex said about this idea that immutability is the goal, which I don't think it really should be even, right? Because we want to keep improving these systems and responding to new needs and new discoveries. So the ability to evolve the system and continue to do that in a way that is community governed and responsible is really the key, rather than trying to get to immutability. One of the big differences between Bitcoin and Ethereum is that Bitcoin is effectively immutable. It does this one thing, and it does it fine, but Ethereum has been evolving more organically and continues to improve. And a lot of the exciting things happening in the Ethereum stack are things that would never have happened if Ethereum had frozen itself years ago. I don't see a future where this progress and improvement stops. So it's important that we actually maintain the ability to continue to evolve and grow these systems. But the key is how that's controlled, right? Community control and a responsible process so that you actually know what you're doing and why. And that's really where we should be going.
So I just want to add to this, like what I use the word immutability in the narrow technical sense, which means like in practice it translates to hardness of commitments. You obviously want evolution of these networks. You want the governance to be able to decide and to push them forward, or the community to push it forward. What you don't want is the governance being able to override any hard mathematical programmable code at any point of time, which completely erases your ability to rely on these commitments. The rule of the game can be changed. Like imagine you go to to a casino and then you start playing the game, and all of a sudden in the middle of the game the rule is like all of a sudden you're playing a different game because someone like director of casino decided to change it, right? That would not make sense. So what you want is the immutability of the commitment. If the governance says we can, any proposal has to go through a 3-month approval period, the community decides, and then whoever is not happy with this, the minority who is like not supporting this fork, always have a way to exit without relying on the honest majority. This is an immutable commitment that must be enforced. Crypto is all about keeping commitments in check with math and cryptography and open source code, and not with people.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That commitment, those commitments once made need to stick. What evolution means is to say 60 days from now, the way we make commitments or what we offer will change.
Correct.
Right? And that's the key to be able to maintain that. You don't want to lock yourself in out of the ability to evolve. You also, of course, want the ability to respond to a true security emergency if it emerges. And that's one of the tough balance points in thinking about how to manage governance.
Yeah, that's really tough.
Yeah, because if you could never change anything in less than 60 days, then if there is a critical vulnerability, despite all of the measures that we all take to minimize the probability of that, you do need the ability to respond on an emergency basis. The key is to make sure that that process is only for emergencies, and the way that it operates and who holds whatever authority there is fully under the control of the community.
Well, which is basically only with a hard fork, because no matter who controls it, like people will always have their own interests or can be manipulated or whatever. You want it to be reliant on the code, and like basically you never want honest majority assumption or honest minority assumption. You want everyone to decide for themselves.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Alex and Ed said. Like, I think we are going to move to stage 1 soon, but I think, always having the ability to, what if, like, I think everyone need to, I think even if some rollup very aggressively move to stage 2, maybe it's not that a good thing if your infra and like your whole thing hasn't been battle tested. Like, people usually say, like, even for ZK, like, trust on math. But what if, like, you write math like with a bug, then like you have no way to even fix that, because you have no, it's just like controlling the power of like how you upgrade the system with secure console and with certain training wheel, like T or whatever multi-prover adds to kind of back, like you can only fix this under certain condition is very important. So I think that's why it's like, and also that's actually another reason why I think large robots still keep accruing more and more network effect, because they are always like 1 year ahead, because they are 1 year ahead on being stage 1, they are 1 year like being battle tested, and then they can move to stage 2, they can more confident moving to decentralization. But if you're a smaller one, and then like you might face some issues even if you're aggressively moving there, and like because your stuff hasn't been battle tested.
Yeah. One more point about this stage 0, stage 1, stage 2. I think there's a lot of value in that categorization, but there's a lot more degrees and nuances of security and decentralization. There are not just 3 categories, right? And so you see like the L2 beat colored pizza as a way to put more detail into that. And I think it's important to have those, to have that conversation and to recognize these things, and that we want to make sure this doesn't become just a box checking exercise, right? As Yas said, if someone is stage 2 on paper, but actually completely insecure, and then you haven't really accomplished anything.
John, you have anything to add from like the Celestia's perspective, especially with regards to the ossification of Ethereum? And I know you guys are shipping very fast upgrades, so how do you kind of balance these 2 forces?
Yeah, so not really sure if there's any connection between Celestia and ossification of Ethereum here. But with respect to rollups and how rollups themselves, how they deal with the ossification of the base layer and themselves, I will say that sovereign rollups, which are kind of pioneered more on the Celestia side, but that also appearing in Ethereum, are kind of an alternative way of doing rollups that have some benefits from this immutability versus not immutability of commitments, but immutability of being able to respond to emergency situations or not dilemma, right? Sovereign rollups essentially can use, or a type of rollup that can use the base layer for its root as a root of trust, so that you have the trust and security that the base layer provides you. For example, Ethereum, you get all of that security. but then you don't have to worry about well, what happens if there's a bug? How do we change it? I think, as Alex mentioned, the only way to really not be at the mercy of a majority of some predefined set of people is through a hard fork. It's one of the things that makes L1s so incredibly powerful, so decentralized, so censorship resistance, is ultimately the final stopgap that guarantees the immutability and correctness of the chain, is the ability to fork off, hard fork the chain, make changes, make fixes, etc. That's kind of like the ultimate stopgap. And sovereign rollups allow you sovereign rollups can be hard forked. They're governed by their community, not by a smart contract. And this is distinctly different than settled rollups. So it offers a compelling alternative to the more traditional settled rollup design that we've seen in the first set of rollups. That doesn't necessarily mean that sovereign rollups are strictly better. They do come with their own trade-offs, but it is an alternative. And as we mentioned earlier in the panel, the nice thing about the L2 roadmap and direction is the ability to experiment. Right, people can launch sovereign rollups, they can launch settled rollups, and we can let the market decide on which one actually provides not the better guarantees, but the better product for them.
Thanks, guys, so much. Let's give them a round of applause for a great panel. Thank you, guys.